My name is Caitlin White, and I'm 29 years old. For 6 long months last year, my home was my parents' guest room. That tiny room with the uncomfortable twin bed, the peeling wallpaper, and a closet that still smelled of Christmas decorations. The idea, of course, was for it to be temporary. I barely unpacked my boxes, convinced my stay there would only last as long as it took for things to sort themselves out. But my mother, Elizabeth, had very different plans. I had returned home after being laid off from a small nonprofit tech company. Budget cuts, they told me. For 3 years, I had dedicated myself to helping community centers digitize their services, scheduling remote appointments for seniors, assisting veterans with navigating online benefits. I felt immense pride in that work, but when the funding dried up, so did the job. I chased everything I could find: remote positions, contract projects, even roles far below my qualifications. I managed to land some freelance gigs here and there, mostly website design and digital troubleshooting for local businesses. However, the market was tight. My savings evaporated faster than I expected. Rent in upstate New York was unforgiving, and in the end, I packed what fit in my car and returned to the same dead-end street where I grew up. My father, David, greeted me with the same formality reserved for an unexpected guest: polite, calm, a pat on the back. My mother, on the other hand, offered a strained smile and a list of things that needed fixing: the stubborn thermostat, the printer that jammed every 3 pages, and the Wi-Fi that reliably cut out at 8 every night. I didn't complain. I installed new email filters for them, antivirus programs, restructured their budgeting app, and updated their online banking security. I even identified a fraudulent charge on my father's debit card before he even noticed it. They never asked, they simply assumed I would do it. Elizabeth wasn't overtly cruel. She didn't shout or slam doors. But every morning, she would clean the already spotless kitchen, as if she were erasing me from it. She folded laundry with dry, precise movements, and when she passed my room, she would linger just long enough for the silence to speak volumes. My younger brother, Max, 25, who lived in Manhattan and worked in finance, or at least that's how he introduced himself, would show up maybe twice a month. My mother would light up the moment he walked through the door. "There's my star," she'd exclaim, beaming. "You look like you've lost weight." Meanwhile, I'd be in the corner, reconnecting the Wi-Fi router for the 3rd time that week. No one said it out loud, but I felt the pressure building, like steam under a lid. I wasn't at home, I was a passing shadow, a reminder of something they preferred not to look at too closely. What I didn't know then was that the person they barely saw, the one who folded their laundry behind the scenes, fixed their passwords, silently made dinner, was the same person their entire system secretly depended on. They would only realize it when I was gone. It was a Sunday, one of those days my mother used to call family days, back when we still used placemats and matching silverware. She made baked ziti, Max's favorite dish, not mine. He arrived wearing a pristine shirt and a watch that looked expensive, greeted my mother with a kiss on the cheek, and tossed his keys into the bowl, as if he hadn't ignored her calls all month. Max White, 25, 4 years younger, but treated as if he had aged backward. He worked downtown for some private investment firm and always had a new app or crypto term to drop into conversation. Elizabeth hung on his every word. I set the table, careful not to chip the one plate that had a crack down the middle. When I sat down, Max looked at me as if I'd shown up uninvited. Dinner started in the usual way, my mother asking about Max's work, Max feigning modesty. I tried not to say much, just focused on my food and kept my eyes on my plate. Then, it came. Elizabeth turned to me, her voice overly casual. "Have you been applying for any real jobs lately?" I froze. I had told her, just the day before, that I had 2 interviews scheduled for that week. I'd even let her read one of my cover letters. But none of that mattered, not with Max there. Before I could answer, Max interjected, without looking at me, at some point, it stops being bad luck and starts being bad choices. I swallowed my words and my pride. The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was dense, electric, but only for me. They continued talking. They laughed about something I don't remember. I took my plate to the kitchen, stood at the counter, and ate the rest of my dinner with my back to the room. I heard fragments: needs to grow up, can't coddle forever, embarrassing. They weren't whispering. They didn't need to. What hurt the most wasn't the words, but the ease with which they were spoken, the naturalness, as if they'd been rehearsed. That night, I lay in bed, wide awake, the same cracked plate in the sink, where no one else would touch it. And I started to wonder, what exactly had I become in that house? The next morning was silent. Not the peaceful kind, but the kind that hangs in the air like smoke after something has burned. I was in the sunroom, hunched over my laptop, finalizing the last adjustments for a local bakery's website. The new spring menu was about to launch, and I had just uploaded the image carousel when I heard the sound, heels on the hardwood floor, quick, deliberate footsteps. Elizabeth appeared in the doorway. She didn't knock, she never did. "We need to talk," she said. I paused, looked up. "Okay. You need to start paying rent." I'd heard this before, usually tossed in among comments about the electricity bill. So, I said what I always said, I will. "I told you, as soon as this job is done, I'll send something." "Are they paying you?" she asked, already knowing the answer. "Yes." She tilted her head. "I'm not talking about someday. I'm talking about now. Today." I blinked. "You want me to write you a check with money I haven't even received yet?" She didn't waver. "No. I want you to grow up." And then, it came. Clean, crisp, casual. "You're just a leech, Caitlin. Living off us, and it's gone on too long." That word, leech, landed like a slap. I wasn't ready for it. She said it without blinking, as if it were a diagnosis, as if I had always been that. Before I could speak, she turned, disappeared down the hall, and returned dragging a duffel bag I hadn't seen since college. She dropped it at my feet. "Go leech somewhere else." I stared at the duffel bag. Blue canvas, my name still embroidered on the side. I unzipped it, slid in my laptop and charger, and grabbed my toothbrush. No scene, no yelling. When I left, the sky seemed too blue for the moment, the driveway too clean. I drove away without saying goodbye. No one followed me, no one watched. But as I walked to my car, I realized something. I hadn't just been kicked out of the house, I had been erased from it. And neither of them seemed concerned about what would happen when I was no longer there. They should have been concerned. I didn't have a plan, just a duffel bag, a laptop, and a tightness in my chest I couldn't yet name. The first night, I stayed at Sam's, an old college friend who still called me White, as if we were on some group project. He gave me the pull-out couch and a clean pair of socks. No questions, no pity, just enough space to breathe. After a few days, I moved into Trevor's guest room, my ex-boyfriend. He was the kind of person who still made you tea before asking how you were. We hadn't spoken in months, but when I texted, the reply was one word: come. That week felt like floating between lives that used to be mine. Trevor worked nights at a community health clinic, so the apartment was quiet. I filled the silence with freelance work, small websites, fixes, whatever came my way. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I was fixing things, not just websites, I was fixing myself. Then, out of nowhere, I got a LinkedIn message. A recruiter from a nonprofit startup had found my portfolio through a project I did for a local art professor months earlier. They were hiring for a digital systems position, remote, full-time, benefits. I interviewed in Trevor's kitchen, wearing a blazer over my sweatpants. 2 days later, I got the offer. It wasn't a six-figure Silicon Valley job, but it was enough. Enough to sign a lease for a studio apartment with creaky floorboards, a refrigerator that hummed too loudly, and sunlight that hit perfectly in the morning. That first night alone, I sat on the floor with takeout food and a phone almost out of battery. No lectures, no silence, no one waiting to tell me who I wasn't. For the first time in years, everything around me was mine, the floor, the ceiling, the air. And no one could kick me out of it. 3 weeks after moving into my new place, I was sitting at my desk, little more than a board with legs, finalizing a grant report dashboard for the nonprofit. The radiator hissed, the overhead light flickered slightly, but I didn't care. Everything in that room, broken or not, was mine. That's when my phone vibrated, missed call. David White. My father. I hadn't heard from him since the night I left. Not a text, not a, "How are you?" I watched the screen go dark, then light up again. Second call, same name. I let it go to voicemail. A few minutes later, a text message came through. "Caitlin, why is the bank account frozen?" I stared at the message for a second. I didn't understand. And then, I remembered. When I was still living at home, before I became a LEECH, as they called it, my father had asked me to help modernize their finances. He hated phone menus and paper statements. He'd given me access to the joint account so I could set up mobile banking, automate their bills, link tax filing software, and set recovery protocols. I became the secondary administrator for all their systems, not to spend anything, just to troubleshoot. That access hadn't been revoked. If something triggered a lock, too many failed login attempts, suspicious activity, they'd need the secondary contact to verify identity. That meant me. I didn't reply immediately. I pictured the scene clearly, Elizabeth pacing the kitchen, arms crossed, voice sharp. David uselessly poking at his tablet, swearing under his breath, holding the phone too close to his face as he talked to customer service. I typed a reply, "Ask the LEECH." No emoji, no explanation. Just that. It only took an hour. My phone lit up like a slot machine, 5 missed calls, 3 voicemails, a message from Elizabeth, "This isn't funny, Caitlin. Call your father. We can't pay the credit card. Are you really doing this after everything we've done for you?" I didn't respond. I wasn't being cruel. I wasn't playing games. But for the first time in a very, very long time, I had leverage. And I wasn't going to waste it. They showed up on a Thursday. I heard the knock before I saw them. My building has a peculiar echo, slow, deliberate footsteps that ring down the hallway walls when someone waits too long at your door. I looked through the peephole and didn't move immediately. Elizabeth was there, my mother, holding her purse tight against her chest, as if it could protect her from what was coming. David, beside her, wore a coat too light for the weather and a tie that looked hastily knotted. I opened the door. "If you've come to yell, don't." They didn't yell. They walked in without a word, looking around the studio as if they couldn't believe I lived there now. It was small, yes, but clean. The light streamed in through the window and hit the stack of papers I'd left open on my desk. No one spoke for a full minute. Then, Elizabeth cleared her throat. Her voice was softer than I remembered. "We need your help." 3 weeks earlier, she'd called me a leech and thrown my bag at my feet. Now, she was in the center of my life, careful not to touch anything. David tried to explain, said something about the bank, about taxes, about how Max had tried to help but only made it worse. I already knew. I'd seen the alerts. "We missed the mortgage payment," Elizabeth added quietly. "There are late fees." I looked at her. She didn't look angry, she looked tired. "That sounds terrible," I said. "You must feel really stuck." She nodded, then, almost a whisper, "I'm sorry." There was no lecture, no justification, just those two words. David echoed her, more slowly, "We didn't realize how much you were doing." I believed them. Partially. I think they didn't want to realize. There's a difference. They asked if I would come back, reset the systems, fix everything. They said they'd pay me for my time, that things would be different. I shook my head. "I'll help," I said, "but I'm not coming back." And I truly meant it. We spent 2 hours at my desk. David on one side, squinting at the screen. Elizabeth on the other, arms crossed, but silent. I guided them through everything, resetting login credentials, verifying identity through secondary recovery codes, relinking the tax software. I had to call tech support twice, once to confirm a 2-factor code they'd overlooked, another to unlock the health savings account portal that Max had accidentally flagged as suspicious activity. Elizabeth didn't say much. David muttered under his breath every time a new security question popped up. "This is ridiculous," he kept repeating, but he answered them anyway. When I was done, I leaned back and looked at them. "I'll send you a document detailing every step, and after that, I'm out." Elizabeth frowned. "Out?" "No more admin access," I said. "No more late-night calls, no more, Caitlin, the internet's down. You'll have to figure it out yourselves or ask someone else. Maybe Max." David didn't argue. He just nodded slowly. They stood up, gathered their things. Neither of them tried for a hug. I didn't offer one. After the door closed behind them, I sat at my desk and opened my Google Drive. There it was, one last shared folder, Bank for Mom and Dad, do not delete. I hovered over it for a moment, then clicked delete. Confirm. Gone. No pop-up asked me if I was sure, and I didn't need it to. For a few days, everything was quiet. Too quiet, I thought. Maybe that was it. Maybe they'd respected the boundary. Maybe they'd let it go. But families don't truly let things go, they just find new ways to spin the story. It started with a Facebook message from Aunt Diana. "Hi sweetie, heard you moved out on your own. How exciting. Your mom said you've been a little distant lately, just wanted to check in and see if everything's okay." Then came a screenshot from Simon, my cousin on my father's side. He was in a group chat with some of the extended family. In it, Elizabeth had written, "Caitlin has changed since she got that new job. She's been cold, distant. I don't even recognize her anymore. All I did was ask for help, and she acted like I'd betrayed her." Then Max, my brother, sent an email. He hadn't said a word to me since the bank account meltdown. Now, suddenly, I got 5 paragraphs. "Look, I know there's been tension, but Mom and Dad aren't perfect. Maybe instead of blaming them, you could try to be more understanding. You've had a hard spell, we all do. Doesn't mean the world's against you. Let's catch up soon, maybe coffee." I didn't reply. Because none of them understood. It wasn't about one argument or one word. It was about every single time I was invisible, until they needed me. A month later, I left New York. My company offered a relocation bonus to join their West Coast expansion, and I took it without hesitation. Portland felt like breathing. The apartment was small, but the light was soft, and no one in the building knew my last name. I joined a local tech group, made friends. Once a week, I volunteered at a senior center, teaching people to navigate emails, digital banking, 2-factor authentication. One afternoon, I sat next to a woman named Grace, helping her reset her Medicare password. She chuckled a little, embarrassed, and said, "You're so patient." I smiled. Patience is all I've ever had. That night, I sent one last email. Subject, update. "Hi Mom and Dad. Just wanted to let you know I'm moving to Portland for work. I've removed myself from all financial systems and accounts. I won't be available for technical assistance going forward. I hope this new chapter brings us both some peace. Caitlin. No reply. Not even a period. But this time, the silence didn't feel like a punishment. It felt like freedom. I sat at my desk, opened a blank document, and wrote the first sentence of something new, something mine. I don't need an apology. I just wonder, if I disappeared, would anyone notice I was the one keeping things running? I don't need an apology. I just wonder, if I disappeared, would anyone notice I was the one keeping things running? The answer, I thought, didn't matter to them anymore. But it mattered to me. Because I knew. And for the first time in a long time, that was the only approval I needed. The radio in my new apartment started playing a soft song, and the Portland morning sunlight streamed through the window. The radiators clank, the refrigerators hum, they were now the sounds of my own life, in my own space. And there, sitting with the coffee mug I'd bought myself, I knew I wasn't just fixing things anymore. I was building. And the first thing I built was myself. Thanks for listening to Caitlin's story. If you liked this video, please like and share to support us in bringing you more emotional stories, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new releases. See you in the next video.